Few places have proven as irresistible to photographers as New York City. Our iconic skyline, our busy streets. Photographers have been pulled to this place as long as the city has existed. Here are 5 of my favorite photographs of the skyline of New York City. The first photograph is Bernice Abbott's iconic New York at Night, which she photographed in 1932. This photograph is an aerial view of New York City, abstracted, so all we see are the lights of the city at night. Abbott had been in Europe and Paris for many years working with Man Ray. She returned to the city in 1929 and found a city that was much changed. A lot of the 19th century buildings had been being torn down to make way for this massive boom in construction that was happening leading into the 1930s. And she was inspired to photograph Changing New York, which became the title of her series of photographs that she made. She started working on Wednesdays, just walking around the city taking pictures. She used an 8x10 camera, which really allowed her to get the detail and grab that incredible detail that we associate with her photographs today. Eventually, she would be funded by the Federal Arts Project and created this massive project of photographs that is really unmatched in the rest of the 20th century in terms of scale and scope and recording. The next photograph is Margaret Bourke-White's photograph of the Chrysler Building, which is one of those buildings that was being constructed in the city just as Abbott was coming back to New York as well. Bourke-White also arrived in New York City in 1929. She was also very inspired by the new architecture that she saw around her. In fact, when she saw the construction of the Chrysler Building, she immediately wanted to have a studio there, and she did. She moved into the building. There is a famous photograph of her actually crawling out onto the gargoyles that decorated the very top of that building, which is astonishing and frightening and really says a lot about who she was as a photographer, which is fearless, groundbreaking, the first to do a lot of things, and certainly the first woman to do a lot of things. She was the first hired by Fortune magazine and Life magazine. She was the first female war journalist. She was absolutely groundbreaking, and her photograph of the Chrysler Building continues to be one of the most awe-inspiring and famous made of that beautiful building in New York. The skyline as we know it in New York City was really created in the 30s. The other building that was going up at the same time as the Chrysler Building is the Empire State Building, which was constructed in 1930 in, I believe, 145 days. It went up incredibly quickly, and Louis Hine was hired by the Empire State Building to document that project. Unlike Abbott and unlike Bourke-White, he was really interested in the workers on the building who were constructing the steel frame of the building and were up in incredible heights without restraint, without cables to tie them to the structure. They were fearless as well, and he was really fascinated by their physical abilities and by their fearlessness. He was up there with him and made some incredible images of the workers, many of which show the city spread out behind them and really show the viewer today how singularly tall that building was at the time. It remained the tallest building in the world until I think 1967, which is pretty incredible. Hine would go on to publish a book about the construction of the Empire State Building called Men at Work, which featured one of the workers on the front. He was interested in the people behind the modernization of the world around him. Another photographer who's really closely identified with New York City is William Klein, who really pioneered street photography as well as this high-grain, intense, blurry mode of shooting the city that was really attractive and really indicative of, I think, the mood at the time that he was working, which was in the 1950s and 60s and beyond. His photograph, Atomic Sky, shows the New York City skyline looking downtown with a bright sun in the sky. William Klein was really engaged with the city and spent a lot of time photographing the streets and the sights. He published a book, Life is Good and Good for You in New York in 1956, which today is one of the most iconic photo books of the 20th century. These images are powerful, they're raw, they're gritty, they're edgy. This is something that really was new in photography at the time. This image is a little bit different from that. It shows the broad expanse of the city, the sun beating down on the skyline, sort of the bird's eye view looking walking downtown. It's unnerving, and the title, I think, really tells the viewer a lot about that feeling that the image gives you, which is indicative of the nuclear age arriving in the world, the sort of fear and the dread associated with that era. So Ernst Haas was also an immigrant, also arrived in New York City in 1951 and was sort of overwhelmed by the power and the energy and the sights and the height of New York City. He was working in color. He had really only just learned color photography, and so was rather new to the medium. Color photography itself was rather new and edgy and sort of being considered and newly received by the art world at large. Haas actually received the first one-man color exhibition at MoMA in 1961. This is, I think, 14 years before Eggleston, who's often cited as an early color photographer, so he was really ahead of his time. His images are also really lean into the sort of grain and blur and abstraction of the city around him. This image, called Lights of New York City, is heavily abstracted and I think says a lot about what it feels to be like in New York City at night, with the influx of color and energy and just the power of what's around you. I particularly love the blue sort of lace lights at the top, which to me look like a bridge. His photography is really appealing and really personal, and again brings us into sort of modern life in New York City.